He's a monster that happened to rise up in a criminal organization that was making billions of dollars.
What if I told you the son of the world's most feared drug lord didn't just inherit an empire, he turned it into something even deadlier and untouchable? According to me, Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar's story is insane. He wasn't just El Chapo's kid. He was raised in narco royalty, living between luxury and violence from the start.
Enero 8, 2016.
And here's where it gets even crazier. Iván wasn't born into an ordinary family. He was born into the Sinaloa Cartel dynasty. His father? Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, the most notorious drug lord in the world. From the very beginning, Iván's playground wasn't a backyard. It was convoys of armed trucks, guarded mansions, and endless stacks of cash. People close to the family say he was treated like narco royalty. Luxury cars parked outside, heavily armed bodyguards by his side, and a sense of untouchable power surrounding him. But more than material things, Iván had access to something even more valuable: knowledge. He was mentored directly by his father, El Chapo, and the legendary Chapo and El Mayo Zambada. That's like having two of the cartel's greatest masterminds as personal teachers. Let me ask you this. What do you think happens when a kid grows up in an environment where power, money, and violence are just part of daily life? But wait, it gets even stranger. Iván's school wasn't filled with math textbooks or science experiments. His real education was in cartel operations, logistics, smuggling routes, intimidation tactics. You name it, he was trained in it. By his teenage years, Iván already knew how shipments moved across borders, how to manage armed men, and how to keep rivals terrified. On top of that, he was surrounded by flashy cars, golden weapons, and personal bodyguards, things most kids only see in movies. You know what's crazy? For him, this wasn't abnormal. It was everyday life. Would you call that education or indoctrination? Just when it seemed Iván was destined to stay in the shadows, the real twist came. He and his brothers formed their own faction. Together, Iván, Jesus Alfredo, Ovidio, and Joaquín Jr. became known as Los Chapitos. These weren't just spoiled cartel kids showing off. They became a legitimate force inside the Sinaloa Cartel, carving out their influence while their father faced prison. They were young, ruthless, and ambitious, and they carried the Guzman name like a crown. And here's the part that blew my mind. They weren't just keeping the empire alive, they were reshaping it. Los Chapitos represented a new generation of drug lords. What do you think? Were they simply continuing their father's legacy, or creating something even more dangerous? And here's the twist nobody saw coming. In August 2016, Iván and his brother Jesus Alfredo were partying in Puerto Vallarta, surrounded by friends, women, and bodyguards. But that night, the unthinkable happened. CJNG gunmen stormed the scene and kidnapped them. The news shocked Mexico. How could El Chapo's sons be snatched so easily? People thought this was the end of Los Chapitos, but within days, the story flipped. Massive pressure from the Sinaloa Cartel's army of gunmen, political connections, and even whispers of backdoor negotiations forced CJNG to release them alive. Instead of humiliation, the incident made Iván's reputation explode. He was no longer seen as a reckless narco prince. Surviving that kidnapping and walking out untouched branded him as untouchable. According to me, this was the exact turning point where Iván stepped out of El Chapo's shadow. What do you think? Would you call it survival luck, or proof that his influence was already stronger than people realized?
Hey, tenemos un herido.
Dale,
it's just amazing. We are getting a brand new look at the gunfight in Sinaloa, Mexico that ended in the arrest of drug cartel leader Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. After this firefight on Friday, Guzman was captured on a nearby highway. He's been on the run for 6 months after his second escape.
But wait, it gets even more shocking. After El Chapo was arrested in 2017 and sent to the US, someone had to keep the empire alive. That's when Iván stopped being the flashy playboy and became the strategist. He tightened operations, gained more control over cartel decision-making, and started focusing on smarter, deadlier profits. According to experts, Iván learned from his father's mistakes, keeping a lower public profile but with sharper business instincts. This transition marked the birth of his billionaire persona. No longer just El Chapo's son, Iván was becoming El Chapito, the boss. Do you think stepping into his father's shoes was destiny or pure ambition? Now here's where it gets deadly. Iván and Los Chapitos saw something that would change everything: synthetic drugs. Instead of just relying on cocaine or marijuana, they shifted heavily into fentanyl. Why fentanyl? It's cheaper to produce, easier to smuggle, and way more addictive. And tragically, it's been fueling a deadly epidemic in the United States. Authorities directly link thousands of American overdoses to fentanyl networks tied back to Los Chapitos. In fact, U.S. indictments and DEA reports specifically name Iván as one of the key figures behind the fentanyl trade. This move didn't just make him richer, it made him one of the most wanted men in America. According to me, this was Iván's boldest and most dangerous business decision. It skyrocketed his wealth, but also painted a huge target on his back. What would you do? Chase insane profits knowing it puts the US government on your trail, or play it safer with old-school drugs?
Y les digo a mis hijos, levántense, le digo, porque quién sabe qué está pasando en la calle. Digo, vístanse y nos salimos. Y todo empezó a tronar, ya no había luz, todo empezó a tronar, tanques, camionetas.
But here's the part that always blows people's minds. Despite the danger, Iván flaunts his lifestyle like a rock star. We're talking Lamborghinis, Ferraris, armored SUVs, and private jets. His mansions are palaces, guarded by men with gold-plated rifles. He even keeps exotic animals, like big cats and rare dogs, as status symbols. And let's not forget the infamous narco parties, filled with music, alcohol, and Corridos songs praising his name. On social media, Iván doesn't hide his wealth. Photos of designer clothes, bulletproof cars, and endless cash circulate constantly. For many young followers, he looks less like a criminal and more like a celebrity. But here's the question: does showing off this lifestyle make him more powerful or just more vulnerable? Because every post is a reminder to the authorities of who they're chasing.
Mexican security forces have captured the alleged cartel leader Ovidio Guzman Lopez, son of the notorious drug lord known as El Chapo.
And here's something you might not expect. Iván isn't just feared, he's celebrated in narco corridos. These are Mexican folk songs that glorify cartel bosses, and Los Chapitos have plenty written about them. The lyrics paint him as a fearless leader, untouchable and rich. On top of that, Iván's flashy lifestyle on social media makes him look more like a pop star than a criminal. Young Mexicans, especially those in poor regions, see him as a symbol of power and success. But let me ask you, does this admiration create loyalty or just fuel the next generation of cartel recruits? Now let's talk money. Iván's fortune doesn't just sit in stacks of cash. It's cleverly laundered through businesses. Think restaurants, real estate projects, and shell companies spread across Mexico and beyond. Experts estimate that his net worth easily touches the billionaire mark. But you won't find it on Forbes. Most of it hides in offshore accounts and front companies that are nearly impossible to trace. Even the US Treasury has sanctioned businesses directly linked to the Chapitos network, accusing them of moving drug money into legitimate-looking ventures. And here's the wildest part. Despite all these sanctions, Iván's empire keeps growing. According to me, That shows how deeply embedded the cartel is in both legal and illegal economies. So, let me know. Do you think someone like Iván can ever be caught through money trails? Or is his wealth simply too untouchable? But of course, empires like this don't go unchallenged. Both the US and Mexican governments are desperate to capture Iván. The DEA, the Department of Justice, and Mexico's elite military units have all made him a top target. And yet, he's still free. Multiple operations to arrest him have failed. Sometimes it's because of direct shootouts where cartel gunmen outnumbered the military. Other times, it's because of corruption, bribes, or inside leaks that tip Iván off before raids even begin. That's why people call him untouchable, not just because of his wealth, but because of the loyalty of his soldiers, the influence he has in politics, and the fear his name carries across Mexico. Think about it. How many criminals can face the combined pressure of two governments and still host parties like nothing's happening?
Bring inmate 837 to room 3.
Raciel, te presento a Manny, agente de la DEA.
Now here's an interesting comparison. El Chapo built his empire the old-school way, using underground smuggling tunnels, personal negotiations, and sheer charisma. He was hands-on, a traditional narco boss. Iván, on the other hand, represents the future. He's digital, diversified, and heavily focused on fentanyl, a drug that makes more money in smaller shipments. He doesn't rely only on tunnels or convoys. He uses networks, innovation, and global reach. According to me, that's what makes Iván even more dangerous than his father. El Chapo was a kingpin of the past, but Iván is shaping the cartel of tomorrow. But don't be fooled by the flashy cars and social media glamour. Iván's power is also built on brutal violence. His enforcers are infamous for carrying out public executions, kidnappings, and gruesome killings to send a clear message. Cross even, and you won't survive. That's why rivals fear him, and even allies think twice before betraying him. According to me, it's this mix of fear and admiration that keeps his empire stable. So tell me, if you lived in Mexico, would you see him as a billionaire icon or a ruthless warlord?
Claro que sí, claro que sí. Pues está triste la cosa, pero pues está triste la cosa, pero está temblando mucho esta madre.
And finally, let's talk about the future. With El Chapo locked away in a US prison, the leadership of the Sinaloa Cartel has shifted. Iván and his brothers, Los Chapitos, are now running things alongside the older boss, El Mayo Zambada. There are power struggles, of course. Rivals challenge their authority, and even within the cartel, not everyone agrees with the Chapitos methods. But Iván is increasingly seen as the natural heir to the empire. If history is any clue, the Sinaloa Cartel isn't going anywhere soon. It's evolving, expanding, and getting deadlier under Iván's watch. And that's a terrifying thought. To the outside world, Iván Archivaldo Guzmán Salazar looks like a billionaire draped in gold, cars, and power. But behind the luxury lies an empire built on fear, fentanyl, and untouchable violence. So, what's your take? Drop it in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, hit like and subscribe.